Last night I made reference to a sutta about distracting thoughts. Oh yes, we don't suffer from that in meditation retreats, do we? Distracting thoughts. Yes, those of us who are in fourth jhana. But for the rest of us who are not hanging out there, we may need a little bit of assistance with these distracting thoughts that come up. So, tonight I have something special for you. The words of the Buddha. I don't think it gets much more special than that. And it is Sutta number 20 from the Majjhima Nikaya, Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. This is, for the sake of the camera, beautiful, look at that. All right, you can get it from wisdompublications.org. Nothing like reading the Buddha's speech. So, this is the Vitakka-Santhana Sutta. This is called the removal of distracting thoughts. So, let us make a start. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Fully Awakened One. Thus have I heard. On one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anandapindika's park. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Blessed One said this. Bhikkhus, when a bhikkhu is pursuing the higher mind, from time to time he should give attention to 5 signs. What are the 5? Here, bhikkhus, when a bhikkhu is giving attention to some sign, and owing to that sign there arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion, then he should give attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome. When he gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated, just as a skilled carpenter or his apprentice might knock out, remove and extract a coarse peg by means of a fine one. So too, when a bhikkhu gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentration. If, while he is giving attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion, then he should examine the danger in those thoughts thus. These thoughts are unwholesome. They are reprehensible. They result in suffering. When he examines the danger in those thoughts, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated, just as a man or a woman, young, youthful, and fond of ornaments, would be horrified, humiliated, and disgusted if the carcass of a snake or a dog or a human being were to be hung around his or her neck. So too, when a bhikkhu examines the danger in those thoughts, his mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. If, while he is examining the danger in those thoughts, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate and with delusion, then he should try to forget those thoughts and should not give attention to them. When he tries to forget those thoughts and does not give attention to them, then any unevil, wholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentration. Just as a man with good eyes who did not want to see forms that had come within range of sight would either shut his eyes or look away, so too, when a bhikkhu tries to forget those thoughts and does not give attention to them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. If while he is trying to forget those thoughts and is not giving attention to them, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion, then he should give attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts. When he gives attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated, just as a man walking fast might consider, why am I walking fast? What if I walk slowly? And he would walk slowly. Then he might consider, why am I walking slowly? What if I stand? And he would stand. Then he might consider, why am I standing? What if I sit? And he would sit. Then he might consider, why am I sitting? What if I lie down? And he would lie down. By doing so, he would substitute for each grosser posture one that was subtler. So too, when a bhikkhu gives attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts, his mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. If while he is giving attention to the stilling of the thought formation of those thoughts, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate and with delusion, then with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he should beat down, constrain and crush mind with mind. When with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he beats down, constrains and crushes mind with mind, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. Just as a strong man might seize a weaker man by the head or shoulders and beat him down, constrain him and crush him, so too, when with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, a bhikkhu beats down, constrains and crushes mind with mind. His mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. Bhikkhus. When a bhikkhu is giving attention to some sign, and owing to that sign there arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate and with delusion, then when he gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, any such evil, unwholesome thoughts are abandoned in him and subside. And with the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. When he examines the danger in those thoughts, when he tries to forget those thoughts and does not give attention to them, when he gives attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts, when with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he beats down, constrains and crushes mind with mind, any such evil, unwholesome thoughts are abandoned in him, and his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. This bhikkhu is then called a master of the courses of thought. He will think whatever thought he wishes to think, and he will not think any thought he does not wish to think. He has severed craving, flung off the fetters, and with the complete penetration of conceit, he has made an ending of suffering. This is what the Blessed One said. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, so you've all got the instructions. Should be pretty straightforward, right? Or not. So some of us will tend to take the last strategy as the first strategy. That is, when we're having difficulties in meditation, Oh, I don't want to be thinking about this. Why am I thinking about this, new car tyre for my car? I should really be thinking and concentrating about the breath. I'm not doing that. And now I'm thinking about maybe changing the paint on my car. Because first I started thinking about the car tyre, and now I'm onto the paint for the car. Now I remember that my husband didn't bring the car in for a service as he said he would on Tuesday afternoon. That means I have to put off my meeting that afternoon in order so that I can... This is the narrative of the mind, right? It's one silly thing to the next silly thing to the next silly thing. And before we know it, an hour has passed by and we're frustrated. Why? Because we don't know what this mind is doing. Apart from being distracted, we know it's distracted, but we don't know why is it distracted. So we're trying to pay attention to a wholesome sign. Now in meditation terms, that could be your breath. Practice of anapanasati, this is a wholesome sign. Maybe you're practicing loving kindness meditation, so you're trying to bring to mind the quality of loving kindness, that feeling of friendliness. There's another term for loving kindness, it's metta, but it can also mean friendliness. And I think that's a really nice term for metta. Friendliness has this kind of equanimous feeling about it for all beings. May I be friendly with them, be they ants or insects or spiders or, politicians we don't like. It doesn't matter. All beings, may they be friendly towards me, may I be friendly towards them, and cultivating that kind of feeling. So the wholesome thoughts in our meditation are directed towards these objects of meditation. But there's plenty. Typically people are aware of loving kindness and breath meditation, but there's also recollection of peace. There's also recollection of the body, like in terms of the unbeautiful aspects of the body. There's also recollection of the devas, recollection of the triple gem, which is what we chant when we chant the recollection of the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. We're actually recalling the qualities of the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. That's actually one meditation that you can do. Some people are highly motivated by that kind of thing. So there's many wholesome things that we can apply our minds to. But the question is how long we do it for. We might start off with all the best of intentions. Okay, I'm sitting down, checking my posture, getting my body ready for meditation. And now I'm going to watch my breath. And typically this is what a lot of people will do. They'll go straight to the breath like a bull rushing at a matador. Of course, you know what happens to the bull most of the time. Sometimes the bull does get the matador. More often than not, the bull wears the sword. And so that's what we're like when we're meditating. We rush straight to the breath, boom, straight to the breath, follow the breath, follow the breath, follow the breath, follow the breath. Ooh, marshmallows tonight. I like marshmallows. Pink ones, the fluffy ones are nicer. But there was that guy standing in front of me in the queue. He took the last pink marshmallow. What's his name? I wonder what he does for a living. He's probably greedy. He's really a greedy type of person. Probably works in a bank. It's like, maybe. And then we started formulating all these kind of silly ideas and judgments about things based on very little information. And sometimes you'll see yourself doing this when you're in normal life. You get in the queue or something at the post office and there's like 5 people in front of you because it's lunchtime, of course. Because of downsizing, there's only half a person working at the post office at lunchtime. So you get in the queue and you're number 5, and then you start looking at the people in front of you and you start judging them and look at the stupid shoes that this person's wearing. I bet you this one here has got to ask something complicated, and when they get to the counter, they do ask something complicated. It's like, I'd like this in some sort of French currency, please, and I want that Ned Kelly stamp collection that you sold 6 years ago, and we'll have to put that's a back order, sir. No problems. I'll what do you need? Oh, we'll need driver's license, and you're just rolling your eyes, just thinking, when is this hell realm going to finish? And so then you start projecting onto this person, and he's just doing nothing more than what you're doing, standing in the queue, just trying to get something done. Usually because they outsource all the simple things to the internet. Right? It's not his fault, it's not your fault, that's just, progress, apparently. So you're all there doing what is very difficult to do in the queue. So the mind starts to go into all these unwholesome thoughts. Initially it was, you're just there to get something done, think, get in, get out, finished. And sometimes that's why we think with our meditation, I'm just going to come in here and just going to sit down and go straight to the breath, and I'm going to be peaceful and everything's going to be fine with the world, I'll be enlightened, and that's the end of it. Well, that's in brief, yes. That's the ideal, yes. But there's a big gap between that first bit and that last bit. That first bit of I'm just going to sit down and do meditation, that last bit of enlightenment, and finishing with enlightenment. So there's a big gap between those two things. So we like to breeze over it very quickly. So when we go into sitting meditation or walking meditation, we'd like to go straight to the object, the breath or the soles of the feet in walking meditation, and think, right, I'm going to just delve into the piece, just like a high jumper will approach the bar and run up to it quickly and jump over. That's what we think it will be like. Well, that's what we hope it will be like. But then after the first 5 minutes of your meditation, you understand it's probably not quite like that. And it requires a little bit more persistence, and it requires some wisdom. How do I deal with my mind when I'm sitting down and practicing some meditation? Am I rushing too quickly, wanting those results? Last night I gave a talk on expectation and how we should manage these expectations, being realistic about our expectations in a 5-day retreat. If we're gunning for stream entry or gunning for arahantship in 5 days, well, I wish you good luck. And I don't believe in luck, so what does that mean? Luck is when you win First Division Gold Lotto and you didn't buy a ticket. That's luck. Anyway, they'll come and collect the money from you. It's an admin error. It's an admin error. Right? So in other words, there's no such thing as luck. Right? There's just causes and the effects from those causes. So when you come to sit down and meditate, don't go running straight to the breath. You might if you're ready for it. And what do I mean ready for it? Your mind is already peaceful. You have very few distracting thoughts. Yes, then it's appropriate. You sit down. Maybe you've just done a massive 3 or 4 hour session of walking meditation. Your mind feels like a sponge which is saturated all the way through with peace. Solid in a way, very stable, immovable in some ways. When you kind of got that mind from the meditation, it's okay. You can sit down and go straight into it. And you don't have the distracting thoughts coming and creating a barrier for your practice. It's fine. Then you go straight to the breath and you find you breathe in. The nimittas come up pretty quickly without big efforts. You don't put big efforts in here. It's natural because you've been doing the work previously with the walking meditation. But if you find that's not the case, when you sit down and then you start thinking about your next carpentry exposition and, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to do that, you start planning what you're doing after the retreat, and it's only like day 1 of the retreat. A lot of us do that. What do I do when I've got to get home? So we're already in the future. We're not ready for the breath at that point in time. So we need to come back to the basics. Ground yourself more and more in the present moment. So when I do some teaching and meditation, I encourage people to listen to sounds in the beginning. Because where do sounds take place? In the future, in the past, or in the present? In the present, right. So I'm asking you to pay attention to sounds so I can ground your mind in the present. But even just listening to sounds can be difficult for some people. They start drifting off. I haven't got anything too difficult to do, I just have to listen. But even so, it's a bit boring. Yeah, tweet, tweet, bird, shuffle, shuffle, person down the hall, slamming of the doors at the wrong times. Oh, hang on, what was I doing? Oh, that's right, listening to sounds. The breath is much harder to follow. It's much more subtle than sounds are. So step by step, I try to get people to ground themselves in the present and then go towards the breath. But I don't teach go straight to the breath, because usually you're not ready for it. But you can be. As I said in a previous example, if you've been meditating for a while, your mind is already very peaceful, very still, very few, if any, distracting thoughts coming through, then fine, just sit down and go straight to the breath. And you might even find that you don't have to stay with the breath for too long. You can maybe go straight to the nimitta. Okay, but for most people that's not the case. So you need to go step by step, gradually. And so what the Buddha does here is he teaches us about distracting thoughts and how to deal with them. And the first thing that we typically do is try to crush mind with mind. We skip the first few steps there and we go straight to the end. I don't want to be thinking about pink elephants eating chocolate bars. I don't want to be thinking about pink elephants eating chocolate bars. Oh, I'm going to crush that thought out. I'm going to push that out. I'm going to think about something else. I'm going to think about going to the beach. Going to the beach. I'm going to the beach, not thinking about elephants. Going to the beach, going to the beach, going to the beach, going to the beach. Oh, damn it, now I'm thinking about beach balls. Sandcastles when I was a kid at the beach. Oh, I don't want to be thinking about sandcastles and being a kid at the beach. I want to think about something else. And then we keep going on and on like this. We're trying to crush the mind with mind, saying, this is a bad thought. I shouldn't be having this thought. We get frustrated with ourselves. And this doesn't help. All you end up doing is getting more anxious and more frustrated, more angry about your practice. That's not the path of peace. That's the opposite of the path of peace. That's not letting go. That's picking up. You're picking things up and you're suffering as a result because you're holding on to this stuff, this garbage from the past, or it could be garbage from the future. You start thinking of, well, I want my mind to be like this. I want my meditation to be like that. I don't want my breath to be coarse. I want it to be fine. I want my mind to be peaceful, not agitated. Wanting something from the future to be in the present. Again, not grounded in the present. Off on flights of fantasies. So the first thing the Buddha says here, evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate and delusion come up. He gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome. And what does that mean? So that means maybe right now I'm trying to do breath meditation, which is a wholesome object, but I start thinking about dolphins in Paris. And so I think, what would dolphins look like in Paris? That's interesting. I've never seen dolphins in Paris. And Paris is in the middle of the land. It's not in the middle of the ocean. This is a stupid thought. So thinking along like these lines, this is not useful for me. I need to change to a different sign. So I might think, well, this anapanasati thing isn't really working for me right now. I'm going to try some loving kindness. So then I do some loving kindness. I change my object from the breath to that feeling of loving kindness, and I try that. I'm choosing a different sign or a different object in my meditation. So in that way, maybe that's enough by itself. Maybe right now I'm a bit too restless for anapanasati to work. So I choose something else. Maybe I'm sitting there and I'm just boiling with anger. God, that person at lunchtime took the last scone. Who are they? I've been here longer than them. I was supposed to get it, whatever thought you have connected with anger. So then we choose. Instead of, again, we might be trying to do, breath meditation or even loving kindness, but you know what? I'm going to choose something different from those two, because loving kindness, when you're really angry, it's not effective. If you're mildly irritated, yeah. But if you're hyper angry, usually loving kindness is like, yeah, may they be happy. Yeah, go and burn in hell and be happy. You're not in the right frame of mind. You can't go from ice cold to red hot, okay? So, or vice versa. So you need to be skillful. So you choose something else. All beings will die. Now, you might think that about them initially, but and may they die quicker than me, But you may think, okay, but I am not dissimilar to that person. Just as they are angry, I can be angry, and we're both going to die. And what is the point of this anger if we're both going to die? Why am I wasting my time on being angry with this particular thing and or person? I'm going to let that go, because I'm subject to change just like everything else, which is phenomenal. I'm subject to dissolution just like everything else, which is phenomenal. So in this way, maybe the edge is taken off the anger and I come back to a more neutral spot. And when I come back to that more neutral spot, I can revert back to my original sign, my original meditation object, which could be the breath, for example. If I start off with breath, it wasn't working, I then think, okay, what's that thorn which is in my mind right now? Oh, it's anger. Okay, I need to deal with the anger. All beings are subject to their karma. All beings are heir to their karma. I too am subject to karma in the same way. Out of compassion for them and out of compassion for myself, I really need to let this go. I really need to drop that. It's not good for me when I'm angry. It's just as if this person, I think this person makes me angry. Actually, nobody can make you feel anything. That's up to you. And that person's just passed me a red hot coal and I'm holding on to it. Oh, yeah, that coal of anger. They're angry and now they pass it to me. And I'm gripping that red hot coal and I don't want to suffer, but geez, I'm going to grip that coal. And of course I'm going to suffer. The more I grip, the more I suffer. So the most appropriate thing to do with a red hot piece of coal is to drop it. Then I don't have any problems. I don't get any more burns. I may have been burnt. Hopefully you learned from being burnt. You don't go and do it again, but inherently we do. We tend to like getting angry from time to time. So we drop that. We have a bit of a scar, a little bit of a reminder. I'm also subject to this. That person won't like it. I don't like it. Why do either of us pursue this? And let it go. And then when you get to that point where you've taken the edge off the anger, then you can revert back to your breath and see if it works for you at that point. This is what that first part is, this changing to another sign connected with what is wholesome. All right. Okay, now the next one is to examine the danger in thoughts. So I might be sitting there thinking about, oh, geez, that person, geez, they're hot. Oh, how amazing. Geez, that person's great. Geez, I'd like to connect with that person. We'd have a wonderful time together. And look, I'm saying wholesome stuff, all right? Because I'm a monk. That's what we should be doing. We'll join a book club together. Whatever. So, but this is a distracting thought because you're sitting there daydreaming about person X. How wonderful it would be. But that thought is not useful, it's not wholesome, it's not beneficial for your mind to become peaceful. Rather, it gets agitated by lust, stirs things up. You might find your heart fluttering. Oh, that person, oh. I'm not looking at anybody in particular in the room. I'm looking at everybody of every gender. When I say that, I like to be, balanced sometimes. Okay, so when you're having those kinds of thoughts, you need to examine the danger in those thoughts. If pursued, what would happen if this was to take place? If I was to connect with this person, what would happen? Well, firstly, I get irritated with them at some stage because just about everybody has attitude. I'm assuming you're not going to hook up with an arahant because they're just not going to be interested, nor are anagamis. Anagamis, they look at you and they go, and what do you want? I'm sorry, I don't have any greed or anger, and you're asking me for... No, I don't play that game. Sorry. Go and see somebody else. Anagamis, the arahants, those who are fully enlightened, and the non-returners are completely finished with sensual desire. They are not interested. They would only see you as somebody who brings food to them or something like that, and nothing more. Oh, look, a food delivery system. But Bhante, I blink like this. And for that Bhante who's an anagami or an arahant, they'd be going, okay, it's good to clean your eyes out. Okay, is the food ready? Because the body is falling apart. So you need to see the danger in these thoughts. If I pursued this particular thought, it could be about lust, it could be about delusion. Delusion, for example, I'm going to buy a house and it's going to be in this suburb and it's going to have this kind of garden and I'm going to meet these kind of fantastic famous people. That's delusion. You've ever had these kinds of thoughts? I'm going to be in that job, I'm going to be at that university, I'm going to get that kind of thing. Thoughts of the future, which is not grounded in reality whatsoever, okay? This is delusion. A lot of us will engage in that. What you're doing after the retreat is a classic example of delusion. What you're going to eat for lunch is a classic example of delusion, right? So we engage in that. If you're on a retreat, typically you'll be thinking about food at some stage. What's the highlight of my day? It's eating. It's eating. I'm going to have breakfast, and then going to have lunch, and there's going to be a long wait. And then I'm going to have cheese and chocolate, some cup of teas in there to break up the day, a big cup of tea. I'm going to drink it really slow, I'm going to have the cup down. I'm just going to go... I'm going to make that... that's going to last at least 20 minutes. Because, God forbid, I shut my eyes. I might get some peace. Or I have to deal with distracting thoughts. which is usually the case, those distracting thoughts. So we try to see the danger in the thought that we're having at that point of time. And so you try to overcome those distracting thoughts by seeing the danger in them. But what if that doesn't work? And you're trying to forget those thoughts. Oh, I'm going to try and forget that thought of the elephant and a chocolate bar at lunchtime. I'm not saying a person is an elephant with a chocolate bar. Maybe there is. All right, but whatever the case is, whatever you're thinking about, and you're trying to forget it. This is, it's like before crushing mind with mind, you're just trying to think about something else. Forget that particular thought of the hot dog with mustard and onion on it. Why it popped up in my head, I have no idea. Maybe some smell that went past, somebody was wearing some deodorant and the smell of it reminded me of a hot dog with mustard. Maybe you need to see that person after the retreat. Just give them some advice about perfume selection. But on an 7-precept retreat as this is, there of course is no perfumes, is there? Or colognes? No, of course not. No. Or antiperspirants with odours on them, which there could very well be. So we try to forget that thought. It's not useful. Try to forget that. We try to put it out of our mind. And usually we try thinking about something else to replace that thought and try to forget about it. Substitution. But what if that doesn't work? Well, he gives attention to the stilling of the thought formation of those thoughts. And so the Buddha uses this is kind of a cryptic phrase, the thought formation of those thoughts. So the Buddha uses the example of the man who is running and he says, hey, why am I running? I could just, walk. And then he starts walking. Hey, why am I walking? I could just stand. Why stand when I can sit? So I kind of like use the simile of pulling the gears back on your car for those of you who know what a manual car is, which is less and less these days. But cars have gears and you change from low to high and then from high to low. Going down the gear range usually means you're slowing down. In the same kind of way with the mind, with these thought formations which are arising and passing away, we look at kind of putting the brake on those thoughts, slowing that process down a tad until it kind of like comes to a grinding halt. That's the ideal. So you can kind of step through a process, whatever you're thinking about, and try to look at reducing it. Maybe I'm thinking about having a big lunch, because we all have to eat. Think about having a big lunch, and I think, maybe today I don't need to have a really big lunch. I mean, actually, if I analyse my stomach and my body condition, my energy's quite okay. It's possible for me to have a medium lunch, but I don't need to have the big lunch. I just have a medium lunch. But then, even then, I check again. Maybe I just a small meal today. I mean, I just eat habitually anyway. I load up my bowl full of food, and I can't eat it all anyway. Why don't I just taper that back a bit? So maybe just a small lunch today will be enough. But maybe look, I've just been sitting around for the last couple of days. I'm on retreat. I don't really need that much food. What work am I doing? Walking? Sitting? I'm not chewing up a lot of energy with these activities. I'm going to skip dessert. I'm just going to have a medium lunch and no dessert, because that's, more than enough. So as you see, you keep stepping it down and down and down and down until you eventually end up fasting for the day. That might be a bit of an extreme for some. Believe me, most of you will survive one day without food. It's been done before. I've done it before. You can probably do it too, depending on your body's condition, of course. So we keep stepping things down. So it's like a thought reduction in terms of the reduction of the gravity of that particular problem, the unwholesome thing that we're thinking about. And the last one, with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he beats down, constrains and crushes mind with mind. Any such evil, unwholesome thoughts are abandoned to him, and his mind becomes steadied, internally and quieted. So that's really where you're giving yourself a hard time about what you're thinking about, trying to push that thought out and crush it. I'm not going to be thinking about hot dogs. I'm not going to be thinking about hot dogs or cold dogs or whatever. Cold dogs with fluffy ears and cute little eyes. I like dogs. I'm going to get some cats too. So we're going to crush it down, all of those thoughts. like somebody would stomp out a fire with a small fire with their foot, right? Try to really quell that fire in one quick step. But that's the last strategy to use. It's kind of like going cold turkey. If you're a drug addict and you're trying to go cold turkey, very hard, very hard. That's why they set up methadone clinics to try and step people down gradually. So this is the cold turkey approach, by kind of, trying to slam that thought out of existence, which is not easy to do. And that's why it's your last port of call. And what happens if you still have those thoughts after that? Usually I find, at least from my own practice, that changing signs is usually quite good. It's basically kind of like a distraction, if you wish, but it's a wholesome distraction. So if breath meditation is not, I'm just not getting the zing out of the breath meditation right now. It's kind of like, it's kind of like boring, hour and a half, boring. Start thinking about other things that I could be doing rather than sitting down, like getting a cup of tea or talking to that person in the room over in a corner over there, because, anything's got to be better than long breath coming in, short breath going out, short breath coming in, subtle breath. Oh, that's a coarse breath. Watching the breath in this kind of manner. Okay, maybe that's really boring for you. Okay, if it's boring for you, you don't have any interest in it, change an object. Change to a different object. And usually that works. Sometimes you have to crush mind with mind. That's okay, but that's the last port of call. Try the more subtle, softer approaches first. So that means you have more compassion for yourself as well. Don't go straight to anger mode and, sumo wrestling mode straight away. Don't have to go to the fight club technique first, all right? Go soft. And the soft thing is there, give attention to some other sign. That's a skillful thing to do. So that usually works. But if it doesn't, then you can take all of these other steps. Trying to eliminate the thought, you can try that. Stepping the thought down from something gross to something less gross, slowly. It's like coming off a drug or something. And then the very last one there being that struggle and smashing technique, right? Or, have a Bex and a lie down. If Bex was invented by that stage, I don't think the Buddha would encourage it because it is a drug. Some of you will know what a Bex and a lie down means. You probably need to be Australian from about 40 years ago to understand that particular thought process. Bex is a headache powder that house ladies used to take, initially to take the headaches away, but apparently it was mixed with like codeine or something like that. So it had this kind of lovely, see you next Monday kind of effect. Sometimes, the Buddha said that sleep is kind of useless time. It's time that's lost or time that's wasted. But it's not time where you're actually hurting another being or yourself, well, directly. Indirectly, you're hurting yourself because you're wasting opportune time for advancement on the path. But, if you're an angry type of person, you like to, strike out and lash out a lot, you're better off going for a little nap. When your kids have a little tantrum, yeah, go and have a sleep. That's right. And 2 hours later, I'm hungry, They forget about it. So if you're like that and you just can't get some sort of anger thing out of your head, maybe you're better off going having a nap than cultivating anger. It's the lesser of the two evils, okay? And sometimes you'll find that things resolve with sleep. If you can't sit there meditating because you've got steam coming out of your ears or whatever, then, have a little lie down. I think that's a better technique than sitting there and just brooding and fuming and cultivating more anger. That's not what the Buddha says, that's what I'm saying. It's a different thing. All right. Okay, are there any questions based upon tonight's Sutta of distracting thoughts? No questions, fantastic.